Eve here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be making some collage paper dolls out of magazines on a wet on wet technique in our art journal. So I started off with some gesso, and while it was still wet I'm putting in some other paints, not cleaning my brush in between. I'm using the Dina Wakley heavy bodied acrylic paints. I'm using blushing, Sedona, eggplant I think is what I'm using at the moment, some tangerine, and just making different patterns and marks in the background, and there's some fuchsia going down. Now I do actually have a video on this technique. It's under the mark making series and in the mark making playlist, so check that out, and it goes through what I'm doing in more detail. But basically I'm just creating the background on my art journal page. In this case I'm using the cotton rag paper to do this technique, and I've done this technique on the canvas and it works really well. It works really well on this page too, but the cotton rag paper soaks up a lot of moisture, and because you're working with the wet on wet technique, obviously you don't have the gesso to prevent stuff seeping into the back of the page. So just be aware, on the previous page or behind that page is heavily gessoed, it's got acrylic paint on it, it's not going to affect my page before. But if you had something with inks on it, it may sort of bleed your inks through, so just work out what you're going to be doing. So the main purpose of this video is just to explore how I put something on top of this. I actually really like the background as it was, but I knew I wanted to put some collage elements on it. And you saw me cut out the front page of a Frankie magazine, which is an Australian magazine, with those flowers, because I thought the sort of circles in the background kind of looked flowery. I wanted sort of an abstracty kind of go. The colours fitted and I thought it would work well, but as I sort of laid it on top, I wasn't really happy with it. So I wanted to go for a figure instead. So instead I went to the Marie Claire and cut out a fashion model and decided I was going to use that instead. Wanted to try some different bits and pieces on her. So I've cut out some eyes from another image, and as I was flipping through I still wasn't particularly happy with that image because it was too large. So again I went back to the Frankie magazine. There was this image of the girl with the blonde hair. The Frankie magazine is quite good because it's got a matte surface, it's not glossy, which works really well on this sort of paper. Now the hat that I'm using in this image is actually from a cooking magazine, and you can see it in the background. The heart I'm making is 2 chilies off a pad thai recipe and the hat was from a placemat that was in the magazine as well. So collage is all about looking at things through a different lens, basically. How can I use it? How can I use it creatively? If you don't have something, make it out of the patterns that you see on the page. I was going to put this cat in, but it didn't have the body in it, so I thought, I'm not sure how I'm going to sort of incorporate that in. I'm not particularly, oh, sounds awful, I'm not particularly a pet person. I am, but I don't tend to do a lot of artwork with animals in it. So I went back to the cooking magazine and I thought the hat needed a star, and in one of the fashion magazines I found the glasses, and it just sort of finished off the funky nature of the page. Now just going out around the outside of my images with my Stabilo pencil. This is a water soluble black pencil. It works really well at going over almost anything, and as soon as you hit it with water you get this beautiful inky line. Using a fan brush, I'm just putting on some splatters of white acrylic ink and black acrylic ink. And with using the fan brush, you get that really sort of fine splatter. I didn't want huge big lumps because I've got a fairly busy background already, but I just wanted a little bit of extra detail. And I like the way it splattered over the image as well, so you've got a reflection of it in her glasses. So while I was looking at this, it needed something else, and what it needed was a quote or some words in it. A lot of the work that I do always has some form of text in it, whether it's text in the background, and you can see that I've sort of scribbled in the background and scribbled some journaling in the background, or text in a rather bold way. So I've got my Tim Holtz foam stamps, which are amazing if you haven't had an opportunity to use them. They take paint and they take ink really, really well. The ink, I first started with ink, and because it was fairly wet still, the acrylic paint was still quite damp in the background, which is why the ink didn't adhere as well as it should have. So I went with the Dina Wakley Black Gesso, which is quite matte finish when it dries, and you get that beautiful bold black line, which is really what this page needed. Now, as I was doing this, I don't tend to measure quotes out all that well. I don't tend to measure them out when I do them, but I did know that I wasn't going to fit comfort in here, so I had another idea for that and skipped straight to do the zone. And as you can see, it was on a bit of a bend and I couldn't get the word in, and I double stamped it. So because I am working with acrylic paint, I was able to wipe off the excess paint and go back in and fix it up. That's one of the bonuses of using acrylic paint. Once it's actually dried, if you go over the top and make a mistake, you can fix it up. Now the journal you just saw in the edge there was my use it up journal. So if I've ever got any leftover paints or stencil images or stamping, cleaning off the foam stamps, I just do it into that journal, and I can always colour over the top, paint over the top, and make another art journal. And a lot of the pages that I'm doing at the moment are going back to that page and working on them. Because it's an A5 size journal, I can complete something quite quickly. So now I'm just doing some ransom letters, and again it came from the cookie magazine because I had it there, and going through and trimming them off and sticking them in. Now I started with a T and working backwards because I don't mind if, sorry about the interruption, I had a visitor. I don't mind if the letters go over the image of the lady, but by overlapping some of the letters anyway, it managed to fit into the space that I had. So now looking at the overall composition, it's just doing those little bits of finishing bits and pieces. So highlighting the letters using the white Stabilo All Pen. Now I would suggest, because I did work wet on wet, particularly up where grate is, you can see it's still quite wet, and putting my pen through it was actually picking up some of the paint. I would suggest actually sitting down and either leaving it to dry overnight, or just putting that little bit of extra heat gun over the top. Now I've drawn around the outside of the comfort letters with the Stabilo pen and just highlighting it with some water, just to give a darker edge to it and a bit of a darker edge underneath the letters so they stand out a bit. I did get some of the pencil onto the letters, the magazine letters, but just by using some white over the top and a bit of a damp cloth over the top, I was able to wipe that off. So this is the finished page. If you're interested in finding out more about the wet on wet mark making, feel free to look at the other videos on my channel, and there's also going to be a new series on making the collage paper dolls coming up very soon. Thanks for watching, and please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Bye.